Beat writer Tim Wilkin from the Times-Union covers UAlbany men's basketball in studio with us this morning, reacting to the historical night, record-setting night for David Nichols with 40 points last night. He is now tied with Gary Holloway, 1957 most points in UAlbany men's basketball history, and now at the Division I level, 2003, Jamar Wilson had 39, and he surpassed him by 1. He gets 40 last night. Good morning, Tim Wilkin.
Roger, how are you today?
Good morning, my man. Good to see you.
Zach, how are you?
What's up, Timmy?
All right.
So you've covered a lot of UA games. Where do you rank that one? In terms of history making.
As far as what the Nichols kid did, it's got to be right up there. I mean, you're not going to say for any drama that game is going to be in the top 50. I mean, it was over after 4 minutes. But, you got to credit what David Nichols did in the situation he's in. I mean, he came out playing with such a purpose. Drilling, 4 threes in the first 5 minutes.
Yeah.
That game was over. That game was over right then.
Yeah, Hartford played a 2-3 zone, and I wouldn't call it an aggressive 2-3 zone. I would say it was a 2-3 zone, and Nichols did have open looks, and to his credit, man, he played with a lot of confidence last night.
Well, I think if Albany played Hartford 10 times, Albany will win 10 times. I mean, Hartford just doesn't have the horses this year, and, Albany now is a team that looks like they're playing on a mission, and we've seen that happen before.
But you never know how a player is going to react in that kind of a moment.
No.
What I mean, I didn't expect David Nichols to go out and get 40 last night. You would never predict that.
No, but I also didn't think he wouldn't throw in a stinker either. I thought he would play well. I mean, he's a very driven kid, and with the emotion of everything that's gone on with him, he gets out on the court. That's his release from that. 2 hours away from everything that's been bogging his mind down, and he certainly took advantage of that and, had the game of his life.
Tim, in terms of, and you and I started covering the team right around the same
Right.
time, about 6 years ago or so, in terms of like a 4-minute emotional stretch, even though the game had been decided, outside of the Hooley shot, nothing, and I agree with Roger, I think that's the best Capital Region sports moment of my lifetime. But that aside, in at least the years that I've been covering, I thought that was one of the most, especially was the start of the game where the game wasn't decided yet.
Right.
One of the most emotional 4-minute stretches. It kind of transcended the game. Is that the way that you feel?
Yeah, absolutely. He, just the way the game started out, the team comes out with David's sister's initials on the backs of their warm-ups, and then the warm reception they gave him, which had to make him feel great. And not that he needed any more motivation, but he came out and you could just see it that he wanted to take this game over right from the start, and he did. He, I don't know if they've ever had a performance like that. I mean, I didn't see Gary Holloway play, and I wasn't covering when Jamar Wilson played, but I don't know if I think you'd be hard pressed to say anyone did anything greater than David did last night. I mean, I think Jamar Wilson had 25 straight points up in the game in New Hampshire. I wasn't there to see that.
I was.
But you've been everywhere.
I've been everywhere. But, yeah, I mean, Jamar, I mean, we're not even comparing players here, Nichols and Wilson. We're not going down that road. We're talking performance level here, and then the emotional level and the moment and what had been going on in the life of David Nichols. Within 24, 48 hours for him to go to Chicago and then come back here in time to get a practice in and then go on the court and you're right, for 2 hours, kind of just a release and go out there and play like he did. And as soon as he hit his first shot, in the back of my mind, I said, I was on the ESPN3 broadcast, and I'm thinking in my mind, this is going to be the start of something. If Nichols is hitting his first shot, and then he makes the second, and then I'm like, oh boy, he's going to get going here.
And he did.
And he did.
And it'd be interesting to see what happens now moving forward, because his sister's memorial service is Saturday in Chicago.
Oh,
and there hasn't been any determination whether David's going back to Chicago for the memorial service. I mean, regardless, he'll play against Stony Brook, but I could see him going back to Chicago to attend that service and then come back here Sunday, or maybe just fly him right to New York. So, it's still, this is still a very tough time for him. And, basketball is going to be his release.
we were talking with Zach By here, my partner, before you rolled in, and I said if I were coaching and I knew it was 40, I would have kept him in the game to get 42. I would have allowed him to become the school's all-time scoring leader. And I get the reasons why you might not, and you brought up an injury or you go hard to the rim and come down, roll an ankle, and all of a sudden you're trying to get a record. You're leaving a guy in, 30-point blowout. What are you doing? I get all that. But for me, if I were the coach, I would have left him in the game. Would you?
No. I think they did the right thing. I mean, Will said in the post game that he didn't know how many points that he had.
Do you buy that?
No.
Neither do I.
But he also said that players were coming up and saying he had 38, and Will was wondering how they knew. I'm sure they must have heard it on the bench, but Will said he was going to come out at the 5-minute mark. That was his plan. But I think he knew. Of course he knew.
He gets the stat sheet just like we do at the media timeouts.
Yeah. I mean, I think.
Well, it was the Nichols watch last night. You didn't have to care. The game's over. It was the Nichols watch, and that's what you do. You're watching to see. All right, he's got 31. He's got 34. He's got. You're watching. Now, what else is there to do in this game? It's a freaking blowout. Hartford stinks up the joint. They're terrible, and UAlbany's rolling. There's no drama, as you said, Timmy. The only thing is, can Nichols get the record? I was getting texts. I had. I tell you, who came over to me. In the middle of the game, right towards the end, Michael Castellana, president and CEO of SEFQ, tapped me on the shoulder, hand me a note like, how many points, how many threes, because would he get the 3-point record,
which
he had,
which is second,
right, second, because EJ Gallup has the record at 9, so he was at 8. What's the NCAA? I mean, all this stuff was going on. People care less about the game. The only thing they want to know is how many records is David Nichols going to break tonight?
Well, the other thing you haven't brought up, Doc Sowers was in the house. Maybe he slipped Will Brown some money to get him out of the game so there would be no record.
Right. I did see
Gary
Doc.
Holloway against Utica, 1957.
Yeah, maybe.
Although Gary had an advantage because he got to catch his breath because they had to fetch the ball out of the peach basket.
Boy, you're tough. I'll tell you what. I'm sure Gary would love to hear you say that. He could probably take you to school right now.
You know what the other thing that I wanted to mention is that, and I am not going to say that David Nichols is on Jamar Wilson's level because he's not, and Jamar's the best player that we've ever seen. And I was watching those games in college and just being blown away.
And I did games. Jamar is way separate. He's out there on his own.
But now that statement's established, what David Nichols has done this year, he's going to score over 600 points in one season. That's going to be, after Jamar, the best we've ever seen. I mean, he's at 577 points. He scored only 40 points last year. He's first-team All-League as a sophomore. He's got an opportunity, other than Jamar, to be the only player in program history to be a 3-time first-teamer. And I think that is worth mentioning.
And it's kind of funny how far the kid has come. He was in Will's doghouse real early this season when he had to sit him down, because, he was being a selfish player back then. I mean, he's still a score-first mentality point guard, but he also is looking for his teammates more now. He's grown a lot as a player.
Timmy and Zach, we both know Will Brown has 2 emotional players that he has to deal with. I mean, I don't want to call them head cases, but between David Nichols and Joe Cremo, I can't imagine what it's like to coach them day in, day out, because these guys are very emotional from game to game, from practice to practice, from possession to possession. You have to deal with what mindset is David Nichols and Joe Cremo in right now.
But I think within that, they're both pulling from the same end of the rope in terms of what their ultimate intentions are.
Sure. But you have to get them there. You have to get them in the right frame of mind. Like, I think Joe was upset he wasn't on the first team. So you got to get his mindset through that, because it doesn't make a difference now. They won the game last night. They need a big game out of Cremo on Monday night at Stony Brook. You win there. You need a big game out of both those guys and then some going to Vermont. So you got to have Cremo and Nichols with their emotions, keep them in check moving forward.
Get them some Starbursts. Give them the sugar rush.
That'll work. That'll work.
And what's lost in this is kind of what Roger and I were talking about off the air. Cremo almost has a triple-double last night.
Instead of, tied the program record for assists, 14 points, 10 assists, and
10 assists, 8 rebounds. I mean, he would have been the first player in the history of the program if he grabbed 2 more rebounds to have a triple-double.
Greg Steyer just missed a double-double.
That's right.
But again, it was Hartford.
It's Hartford, and they're playing no defense.
But you got to give Albany credit. They
They didn't do what they did last year, which, they laid an egg last year. And they, to their credit, Will said over and over, we are going to go out there and smack these guys in the mouth. Do not let Hartford make threes and hang around and make this a game, because this shouldn't be a game. Go get it done. And they did last night.
And now they've won 11 of 13. I think, the only two losses were Stony Brook and Vermont.
Yep.
They still have to prove that they can beat those two teams that finished ahead of them in the standings, but you argue that they probably should have. Yeah, they definitely should have beat Stony Brook down there, and then they lost up at home by what was it, 7? So did
they win Monday?
Who?
Albany.
Yeah,
at Stony Brook.
Do they win?
Tease that. Do they win? Do they win Monday? And did Joe Cremo get snubbed not being on that first team? You looked at the first team. You looked at the second teams. Cremo, first team America East player. We'll put Tim Wilkin on the spot next on Big Board Sports on 104.5 The Team, ESPN Radio. My partner Zach Byfield's about the top 5 in the America East Conference, which David Nichols is on that first team, the sophomore from Chicago, Illinois, coming off the 40-point record-setting night at CEFCU. Joe Cremo, first man left off that top 5. He is a second team America East. Tim Wilkin, you've been covering it all year long. Did Joe Cremo get snubbed here?
Well, I don't think Albany was going to get 2 guys on the first team if Vermont, who went through the season undefeated, didn't get 2 guys on the first team. I mean, I don't know. They say the coaches vote on this. I don't know. Do they really? Or does the league step in and try to put things in their own perspective? I mean, the first team they had, Trey Bellhanes, you got to put him on there. David Nichols, I think you got to put him on there. Jihad Thomas, even though UMass Lowell stinks, they still can't even be in the playoffs until next year. But the year he had, I think he's got to be on there. Leisner, he's got to be on there, doesn't he? And the fifth one was what? Woodhouse from
Woodhouse, yeah. And he's got to be on there.
And he's got to be on there.
So who do you take off?
I think Jihad Thomas. His team stinks, Tim. His team stinks.
Andre Dawson was the MVP of the National League with the Cubs, and they finished in last place. Is it the best players, or is it the best players on the best teams? That's what you got to distinguish in these kind of awards. And again, if Vermont doesn't have 2 on the first team, Albany, which finished 3rd, certainly isn't going to get 2 guys on the first team. Do you take David Nichols off and put Joe on? I don't know. I mean, I just think it's kind of a tough deal here. I don't think you're not going to get 2 guys from Albany on the team. It's simple as that. And I know you got vested interest in this.
No. I'm just asking.
Where do you live?
Nichols.
Where are you from? Scotia? Are you from Scotia? You are from Scotia.
Listen, Nichols and Cremo are separated by a point, right? If Cremo averages 17 and Nichols averages 16, would we even talk about it? Because Cremo's top 11 in the league in every statistical category.
But then you put Joe on there and take Nichols off?
I'm not saying that was the case, because that's not the case. Cremo didn't average 16 and Nichols didn't average 16. But if that was the case, would we even discuss it?
Yeah. Sure. I mean, David Nichols still had a pretty good year.
He had a great year.
I mean,
better than a good year, great year.
Yeah.
He deserved to be first team.
I also just don't know when the voting ended, because Joe struggled a couple games, and I don't know exactly when the cutoff was for these coaches who do tend to look probably at stats. The coaches aren't watching video and seeing the game. So when he struggled against UMBC at home, got into early foul trouble on Scotia night, and then, shooting percentage at Maine wasn't very good, even though he had a double-double. I don't know when the voting, and maybe some of his games here recently hurt him in the final voting, and that's the reason he was the first guy off.
I've always wondered, does non-conference take into account?
I guess, but I think a lot of these coaches vote just based on conference.
And do their sports information directors cast the vote for them? And do you think that really, what you insinuated last second, do you think really the conference sometimes steps in and intervenes?
I do. I thought that with the MAC, too, for years.
Interesting.
You just got to put this guy on because look at his numbers. It's because who knows what goes on behind the closed doors. Yeah, I'm sure I know some coaches take it serious, but I'm sure there's other coaches say the SID. I can't be bothered with this. You do it,
right?
And
that's what Jimmy Patsos came in here and said yesterday. Like, well, Shark does it. Like he knows all the numbers.
That's his director of basketball ops,
right. And he's really plugged into the stats and everything like that. So he kind of leans on him for it.
Maybe the media should vote.
You think so?
Maybe the media would take it more serious. I don't know if the coaches do.
I think there's too much I mean, it is what it is. You want to be, you feel like you've had a good year. You want to be rewarded for it. At the end of the day, you kind of look at it, go, okay, whatever, move on, and
right.
And that's what I think everyone needs to do. And now you move on to Stony Brook. Can UAlbany go to Stony Brook Monday night and win? I think the answer is they can.
Sure, they
now
can.
The follow-up is, will they? Will they win? You have an interview after the game with Will Brown, right? On your post game here on 104.5 The Team. We are the home of UAlbany men's basketball, and Zach and I'll have the call together at Stony Brook on Monday night, 7 o'clock pregame. Here is Will reacting after last night's win over Hartford.
Absolutely. We'll be ready to go Monday night. It's going to be a great environment. We're going to be ready to go. We're going to be excited to play, and we're going to win on Monday.
There you go. Will Brown predicting a victory on Monday at Stony Brook. What's your thoughts, Tim?
It's always difficult to win on the road, but Albany should have confidence going down there, knowing that they should have won the first time down there, blowing that 21-point lead with 7 minutes to go. And I'm sure that's motivation for themselves. I mean, you look at what I think Stony Brook's 10-5 at home this year. One of the wins was by a point over Maine, which is, Maine is Maine. Maine is horrible.
Didn't they get beat by Binghamton too?
That was at Binghamton, I believe.
Okay.
And they also lost at home to NJIT in a non-conference. It's absolutely Albany can win, and I think there's a lot of people throughout the league that think Albany will win. I mean, John Gallagher said, and this is, who knows what coaches say before games, but he says Albany's head and shoulders the second best team in the league. He expects them to be in Burlington, and he gives them a good chance to win in Burlington. But, you can't get too far in front of ourselves. I mean, it's not going to be an easy game. You're not going to see them beat Stony Brook by 40, 30, whatever it was, that's 31, 39. No, 30, 29.
Yeah, whatever.
But they're not going to go down there and do that. I mean, Stony Brook, I think, is one of the better stories in the league this year because of everything they lost last year. They finished second in the league. You could have made a case that Jeff Bowles could have been the coach of the year.
Yes.
I mean, and without Vermont having a season that they did, he probably would have been the coach of the year.
Yeah, I mean,
at Stony Brook.
I think they were picked to finish sixth, I think.
Think about that.
And they've got a... They don't have a team with stars. I mean, the Woodhouse kid, the point guard, is good, and you want to have a senior leader in the postseason, and that's what makes. I think that he could be the difference in the game. I'm not going to go out and say who's going to win, but I expect a close game.
I like UA Monday night. I'll tell you why. I think that when you are a team like UAlbany, you had a 21-point lead on their court, I think your confidence level is pretty darn good that, geez, we blew this game. We had them by 21 in their home court. I think the confidence level going there is going to be extremely high for UAlbany because they played a great game outside of 7 minutes. They just had a total meltdown, which you never see happen. That'll live forever too. 21-point lead with 7 minutes to go and you lose the game.
It's true.
How in the world does that happen? So I think the players on this team and the coaching staff feel like, you know what, going on the road is not a bad thing because we had this team beat on the road. We're up by 21 with 7 minutes to go. I think that will play in their favor, Zach, on Monday night.
Raj, I agree with you. I think that Albany goes and wins that game. I've been saying this for 2 weeks ahead of time. You guys have both heard me say it on and off the air. I don't think Stony Brook beats Albany 3 times in one season, especially after seeing what I saw last night. You can't tell me that locker room is excited to play Albany right now.
Could be. I mean, that's, they kind of limped home, too, in the regular season. They lost to Vermont, but everyone lost to Vermont. And they also lost to UMBC. I don't know if they're... And, they didn't exactly waltz through Binghamton last night, either. I mean, it was
a 10-point game. Yeah.
Yeah, it was, Albany, it seems, is going in the right direction, the right way. I don't know if Stony Brook could say the same thing. But, you always have to put the intangibles in there, and playing at home is a big deal. That could count for 7-8 points.
I will say this: if you're John Becker, you don't want to see UAlbany. You want to see Stony Brook. You just beat them by 15 last week in the home court because Stony Brook it has no chance of winning in Vermont. None. Zero. I think UAlbany has a chance, not a big chance, but there is a better chance for UAlbany to go to Vermont and win than Stony Brook. In my mind, there's not even close.
They were up 7 in the second half 2 weeks ago in Burlington. So I'm with you. I'm with you there. I'm not saying it's a good chance.
No, it's not a good chance.
Vermont's going to be a legitimate favorite, but I think if anyone can do it, I think Gallagher's on to something. It's Albany.
Mm-hmm. The question is, when are we leaving for Stony Brook, boys?
Well, I'm leaving it.
You're leaving noon on Monday?
Something like that. It's going to be a long day.
To be determined when we leave Zachary by. And by the way, Timmy, you are so close now. The weather's starting to break. And once you get through a couple of more games, it's horse racing season for you.
It is. You're right.
It's Derby time.
Watch out for Chad Brown's big horses running this Saturday.
Really? Okay.
Practical Joke in the Fountain of Youth.
Love it. Love it. And you already locked in. You know you're going to the Kentucky Derby, aren't you?
Yes.
Beautiful. See? Well, it's on my bucket list one of these years.
Why don't you go this year?
I'll join. I don't know. There's a lot of things going on in my life.
What do you got? What's going on
Little
in
League baseball. I don't know.
Come on,
There's
Roger.
a lot happening.
Come on, Roger. Tell Babulis to, bite the bullet. And
well, it is on NBC, right? Yeah. We're the home of the Triple Crown. So it would make I tell you what, if Chad has one of the favorites or the favorite, and maybe this Practical Joker is going to be the one.
Practical Joke, not Joker.
Practical Joke. If he's a favorite, maybe I'm going to have to be locked into the Kentucky Derby, all right?
All right.
Tim Wilkin, thanks for coming in for a few minutes.
Thank you.
Tim Wilkin, Times Union, and covers UAlbany men's basketball, joining us in studio after the record-breaking night from David Nichols in a 100-71 victory over Hartford.